Thank you very much. It's nice to see all of you. Hopefully have a chance to meet all of you throughout today and that. But thank you very much, AMAG, for the opportunity to be here, specifically Kyle for reaching out, putting this together, Sam, Dave, and team for the opportunity to do this. Without being able to do this, it's hard for me to do what I do, which is, believe it or not, travel around all over talking about access control and smart locks. My dad says I just shitpost on LinkedIn. That's his definition of what I do. But it's actually turned into something. I think it's a moment in time which we'll talk about, and you'll see why I believe I'm able to do what I do on a daily basis. But it's also because of folks like yourself give me the opportunity to do this too, and I don't take it lightly. So thank you. Feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, as I said, or my dad says. And feel free to email me, but I really want the conversation. So if I do write something you don't like, or you have a different point of view, by all means engage. I'd love to have it. If you do like some of the stuff too, let me know. It's always good to hear from the community what's going on. But I do try to travel around to all the different countries, the different customer types, the rest, to get a real global view of what's going on with the access control industry, try to synthesize it with digital transformation that's happening, and really try to be the voice of what's happening with what I believe is a $100 billion opportunity, which we'll get into. This is a presentation called Inevitable Trends. So what I've done is I went out over the past year, and I continue to update this and take those ideas and thoughts and try to synthesize them into. Everyone that does like what I do likes to have trends presentations, typically between October and in December is when we start to do them. I struggle with them a little bit just because when there's a lot of disruption that's happening, you're currently in a position, which I'll talk about, where all truths sort of exist, because depending on where you're at, depends on what sort of truth you believe in. And the thing that I've walked away with, and something that I'm talking about now, is every single one of these truths, that whether they're an old truth or a new truth, they do exist. That's the essence of disruption. I talk about going from water to ice, that phase change that happens. If you're, depending on which side you're on, it's either ice or water, in that slush weird period in the middle where it's either water or ice, depending on what you look at it, it's true and it exists. So these things, you'll see, these are more of like trends or thoughts, at least the direction where things are going. We'd love your feedback on it. But so I'd like to talk off and start always that we're having a moment. There's no better time to be in the access control industry than currently now. When I first started close to 15 years ago, I was with Brevo. When we first started off, we were this weird little company in the back that did cloud stuff that no one cared about, to where now it's turned into something different on that end. But there hasn't been a moment, in my opinion, in the past, and I'll talk to you about it, than currently right now. The big thing, though, is that the next 30 years of our industry has absolutely nothing to do with the past 30. And what I mean by that is that the rules are very different as far as where we go forward. It doesn't mean that the past 30 years don't matter. It doesn't mean that if you don't change with this that you aren't relevant. No, it just means there are different rules and different truths of what's going to happen. And none of it is predicated on what happened 30 years ago when electronic access control first came out. And I'll do it, and I'll tell a little bit of story around this. And Dave, I haven't seen your presentation, but I was happy to hear it. There's some similarities to some of the stuff that we're talking about with the strategy I have going on. So I find it very encouraging to hear you talk about that. And one of the things that Dave mentioned was that we used to be a people business, an identity business, and we kind of gave that away. I believe the same thing on visitor management. Like through COVID, visitor management used to be something that we didn't really care about it as an industry. We looked at it as like just a clipboard, digital, and then you saw all these companies through COVID come out and really care about it, and it turned into a tech company tool and that. But same type of thing. Oh, thank you. Same type of thing happening here with people. So what I mean by that is, if you look back, and I've been trying to find the history of electronic access control, and I've gotten as far as back as the first electronic access control being in 1973. And is anyone familiar with what was in 1973? All right. So a company called TRW, if you're familiar with that. It was a check verification company. I wasn't born then, so if you remember these systems, you'll have to tell me about them. But it's basically, you went up to go purchase something, they took the check, they ran it through this machine, it popped up, they put a code in, it popped up and said, yes, that person, basically this check's not fraud, you can utilize the check. Well, this system had, and it specifically was this one, had a relay on the back end, and somebody said, oh, can you attach that to a door, and if I put a code in, it would unlock the door. So back in 1973, it was actually tied to pay, it was tied to people, and then you utilize that and it unlocked a door, which sounds a lot like all the conversation that's happening with mobile currently right now. I call it going back to the future. In 1983, what happened was has everyone heard of Basics, B-A-S-I-X? Maz Kasaka, a group of a bunch of people, John Henry, I believe is one of the guys' names. There's a whole bunch of people. That company spun out at TRW. When they spun out, it moved to the door. And they got rid of the check verification side, the two-factor went away, all of that, to the point where some companies came out with scrambled keypads and things like that, which was going kind of back to where things were. But in 1983, we went from people to door. And from 1983 forward, we had a bunch of things happen, tragedies that happened that even brought us further into higher security needs and less about consumer type, customer experience type things. And that market is a $10 billion market by Omdia. Now, I've been pretty vocal that I think this is garbage numbers, but it's the only numbers we have, so we all hallucinate that these are the right numbers. That's fine. It's probably somewhere around there, but call it a $10 billion industry. That's what the high security marketplace is, globally. That's what we all have worked into. Realistically, that's a cottage industry. Because the reason being is I think these dates actually are more important to what's impacted our industry. It doesn't mean that the other ones didn't happen. They're fine. That's the cottage industry that we are in. We've all done well in it. Like people have made this into a career. But in 1969, you had ARPA come. Does anyone know what came from ARPA? The internet, okay? In 1999, Salesforce. Why is that significant to us? It's the first introduction really of SaaS into the marketplace. The iPhone came in 2007. What is the importance of the iPhone? Mobile, but even more, consumerization really. This is where you start to see a stakeholder of people that we protect, but never really cared to get to know them. They were a card or a fob, right? Now we have an interaction with a new stakeholder being an end user. Does anyone believe that the end users aren't going to impact upstream how our products function? I can promise you they will. And then COVID, right? COVID happens, it accelerated. A lot of these trends that we'll talk about were happening, but they weren't accelerating. Digital transformation was happening. We'll get into what those are. But if anything, ARPA is an enabler, the internet, right? The cloud. We treat cloud like it's a feature of our products, but that's because as an industry we didn't have it, so now we have it. So we have this like weird, it's a bolt on to it, but it's not really. But companies that are coming into our industry that build with internet in mind, so cloud-based as an architecture, they have a different language. You start to notice they have, but this is an enabler. Salesforce with SaaS, it made it comfortable. So like back when I first started, I had to explain to people what SaaS was. Now people understand what it is and they've used it in other business operations that maybe not in our industry, but in other areas, they're used to paying reoccurring revenue. They understand at things like SLAs. They understand what you get with having a SaaS tool. The iPhone, we talked about the consumer, and then COVID being the accelerator. The biggest shift that you're seeing in our industry, though, currently right now is with all of those things, is we're moving from hardware to software. You talked a bit about it. Software has historically been a feature of hardware. It supported whatever our hardware was. Frankly, it's also what is created moats. It's why it was hard to have a product built in India ever do anything in North America. It was really hard for a company out of France to move into Germany. It was because it was very hardware specific. If I had a particular lock or a particular panel or a particular reader, I had to re-engineer it basically to be able to work in all those other markets. Now with software, you've got large organizations coming out of those marketplaces that historically could never be, and it's actually what's being an enormous threat, specifically in North America, and opportunity. Companies like IDQ, for instance, that would never exist they would never do the Indian Transit Association there of millions and millions of people and try to come into North America. It just would never work. Now, because of software, it can. And this is why we're having that moment. The move from hardware to software is changing all these new rules and new truths that happen. And it's definitely moving the cheese of our industry. And you can see some people. There's people that love my stuff and there's a large group that hate my stuff. And I think that a lot of people that hate my stuff is partially because some of the stuff I say is intended to drive emotional response. But the other side of it is that it threatens their self-identity. They've built entire careers based off of truths that frankly in this new world don't matter. And that transition is threatening, especially when you have loudmouths online like myself talking about it and and it creates this or conver thing. It's either good or bad, when in fact this is an and conversation. Both can exist at the exact same time. Especially I talk about $100 billion industry that we're actually in. That 10 billion is a part of it. It's not in lieu of, it's part of it. I mean, I think the quicker we get there, the better we are. And this is where I've been building on this. This is a work in progress and I get good input from it, which makes it evolve. But this is how I see the marketplace currently now. So 1970 all the way to the rest. I actually believe I'll be dead or retired. And if anybody wants this deck, I'm happy to send it to you also. And you can use it in your stuff and whatever you need, just let me know. This legacy industry will continue to grow forever. That $10 billion industry will do 5 to 8% growth forever. Great businesses, we've got a bunch of them that exist everywhere. There's a bunch where you're like, I can't believe they're still around, but it'll be there forever and go, and that's fine. What you're starting to see though is a group break off here that I'm calling legacy bolt-on transformed, where they come from the legacy side, but they're starting to bolt on things like cloud, mobile, AI, whatever the next thing is. You're starting to see them break out. They'll grow at a higher rate than the 8%, but then you're seeing this new transformed group that comes in. And this group is coming in and they're building with cloud, mobile, the wallets, AI, security as a baseline of what they build, but doing things like operational efficiencies, revenue generation. These are companies that are coming in that frankly are starting to try to eat into here, but frankly don't care as much about this. And this is where we see friction. Like Verkada, for instance, this is why Verkada pisses off our industry as much as it does. They don't care about this. They're starting to show up. They came to securing the ground and hiring people that have been for our industry, but for a long time, they don't go. There's gonna be a whole bunch more that come out of this. You're seeing things weird happen here, like Convergent doing a relationship with Deloitte. Anyone see that one? It kind of was like a passing press release. I talked to them, they're still trying to figure it out. But that's a big deal. That's a different top of funnel impact in our industry. We talk about systems integrators. That's a systems integrator. It's an enterprise software systems integrator where what they're solving for is, commercial real estate globally is, having a moment currently right now, right? What they're solving for is like, help me get people back to my office. I need my building to be better than it is. They're not saying, help me make it more secure. But downstream, we're seeing readers be ripped and replaced that historically I've been told by the old truths of the world that never happens, right? We're an annuity business. You install it, no one ever takes it out. Now we're seeing them ripped out. Why? Because they want a customer experience that looks more like hospitality in a commercial real estate building and not a high secure thing where, if you think about our industry, right? We deliver high security by putting barriers up. So actually a bad customer experience is a good thing in our industry, not anymore. Convenience and security are gonna have to play nice with each other in this new world. And that's what this group is doing. Now there's probably other sections here of like different companies, and I've been asked to plot companies on here and the rest, so I'll get to it, but this is to me what's happening currently. And the question I have when I talk to companies and to people now is when they'll ask me like, what do I think? This morning I had breakfast with somebody that said, what do I think about mobile wallets? It's like, well, you tell me, am I talking to somebody who believes the world is 10 billion or 100 billion? Because I could tell you what I believe are truths in each of them, and they both are important. It's just one is very different than the other. The mentality is very, very different depending on what's there, but it is a mindset. It's 100% a mindset. You build your company based off of 100 billion to 10 billion. And even into the integrator side, I'll sit and go to like PSA, for instance, and have a conversation, and there'll be a dad and a son, which is pretty much, I mean, look at this room, it's primarily dad and sons. And that's what's happening inside that room as well. And the dad will be like, oh, like this, like this, right? Close to retirement, happy with what's going on. The whole idea of like AI and everything else, it's like, don't need any of that stuff. Like, can't have convenience with security. And then the son will ask me at the same thing, would be like, so about AI bots and generative AI, and it's like you see the tension between the two of them, and there's a $100 billion mindset and a $10 billion mindset sitting right next to each other at that meeting within the same company. And the good news is right now, we're at the beginning. The bad news is we're at the beginning because we still have some time. And I talk about it just 60 billion, if not 100 billion, like, I don't know, it's north of 10. I don't know if it's 60 or 100. 100 sounds better when you're in like my position from a marketing standpoint, but reality, we did some math and showed that we believe if you think there's sort of, for every 1,800 square feet globally in the different verticals, there's a reader or a lock or an opening. This is some data and stuff that we put together. We roughly came around with the reoccurring, the hardware, it came at about 60 billion. You can do the math and change it. I don't care if you tell me it's 40 or 50. All I know is it's more than 10, so I'm happy. So you picked a number that goes there. And the biggest thing, again, we talked about that, the impact, we're moving back to people. But there's more of what we're doing. And really, when you have the conversations, it should say security and then operational efficiency and revenue generation. Business operations, you hear come into this too. And we'll get into what I mean on this end. The good news is safety is at the bedrock of all of this, because I don't care how good the lattes are in the building and I have an app company. If I don't feel safe and I'm not safe, I'm not going into that building. So it's our opportunity as an industry to take advantage of the position that we're in, because we can deliver the safety and security part. We deliver the utility that needs there. You're seeing companies come in and say, especially for those organizations that fight integrations with these apps, what's happening is they are becoming access control companies. They are doing a value arbitrage. They're sucking the value out by building interfaces that they work with our system. I see it all the time, commercial real estate especially, where systems are becoming single users with a sort of an open calendar, one credential, and all of the intelligence is being moved up to middleware into the applications because those companies have historically said, nah, I don't need you. That's our building. We've already installed it there. You're just, you're a barnacle on our business. It's like, I don't know. The customer is more or less telling them that they want these features that you've said has been on your roadmap for 5 years that's never come. They're able to deliver it. You're starting to see that. But if you look at all the reports, this was a new one that came from Gallup. It's called the Global Safety Report. Highly recommend you read it. I did a summary of it on my LinkedIn if you want to go see it there for those of you that don't want to read it. But basically it comes down to, this is the first time in a long, long time the world does not feel safe for all the other reasons. This isn't a political conversation, but it just, the data that they have from Gallup, which is a big organization, is saying so. I don't want to be sort of a person that gets excited about tragedy, but that is the business we're in, is we can start to message and have a conversation of showing how we can help make the industry safer. And we can command the space, if we want to, command the space we occupy. But it's going to take different mindsets, different relationships. What has historically been competition are now partners, right? Historically, or things like companies that we used to work for that we hate, that we now just get excited and make business decisions just to see them suffer. Like, that's what goes on currently right now with HID. Everyone hates them, right? And and so it's like, whatever happens, I'm in as long as it hurts them in a way. But in my opinion, that's companies like Apple are sitting back and just watching us all sort of knife each other and just sitting whistling and waiting. And I can tell you they have two things we don't have: time and money. And they'll just wait it out while we kill each other. In the grand scheme, they'll go after it. So as an industry, we need to rethink the way that we're approaching this. And that's why I talk about, to me, this is the summary. There's a leadership opportunity, but for companies seated in security that have an and versus or mentality. What I mean by that is we want to have binary conversations. There's legacy bloggers in our industry that want us to be in a position where we have legacy and or conversations, when the reality, this is an and that we start to leverage, using the mentality that we have, to leverage the currency that we have. I look at our depth of security and safety knowledge as a currency. That's our business. We just have to leverage it. And at the same time, though, be comfortable with the fact that it's going to challenge our conventional wisdoms, and that's okay. And our job is not just to keep bad people out. And I'll talk about that's like the summary too of that I'll get into next, okay? So the question I have for this group is, are we going to use this opportunity? Are you going to use this opportunity currently right now that we have as an access control globally? I don't care what market you're in. I've been to a lot of them. No matter where I go, this same opportunity exists. So whether it's in Turkey, Ireland, here, North America, South America, every single one of them, all of this is happening. Now, every market that I go to, they tell me about how the other market's more progressive than their market is. It's kind of interesting. But regardless, that tells me there's progress happening in each of them. Maybe at different rates, at different places. Sure, the Middle East, cloud is a hard thing to do, but I can tell you the digitization that's happening there is not not for the faint. It's actually really happening. Whereas in North America, it's sort of everyone wants to go after that marketplace, but it has its own issues when it comes to that. So let's talk about what some of those inevitable trends that are happening that are impacting this and creating it. I'm not going to talk about all these. I'll get into a couple more in depth, but I'm happy again to share any of these. I'll talk about any of them to the point of nausea. But so asking me about if any of these trigger an interest on your end. I have 16 of them. These are the first 8. These are the next 8, and depending on who you're at and what's going on, we'll do it. But I wanted to talk about a couple that I thought would be interesting for this group specifically. The channel is being redefined. Historically of how our products went to marketplace was like this. Granted, there's nuances, so you can argue with me about little bits, but whatever. Was that predominantly the physical access control systems like AMAG, right, were distribution for all of these things on the bottom. Now, some manufactured them, but like they have their own controllers and that. But regardless, most of the companies, these products were distributed back through to a security integrator. And there's a difference between systems integrator and security integrator. I can get into that, but security integrator or dealer would then take it to market. You have some like third-party integrations that were predominantly driven by opportunities like, hey, we have this bank that needs this thing, can we do it? Sure. There's not like a roadmap to do that. We like begrudgingly got into this thing, but it was primarily security. Now what's happening, now that we're part of a larger value proposition, you're starting to see people like Salesforce distribute our systems to the marketplace. And these weird groups like Swift Connect, anyone familiar with them? Or Solo Insight are now into it. So I was at a very large, the largest commercial real estate company in the world. And before, they had an integrator, they had manufacturers that would handle the visitor management and the rest of it. It's all shifted completely because those companies have been saying no to what they wanted. They brought in these companies, they said yes, it was software driven. Like you go to a lot of these stuff, they want it blue overnight, they wake up the next morning and it's blue. So they've moved that. And what they've also done is they're now looking at the access control system with HR, CRM, IT, financial, IWMS systems, all being brought to go do that. And access control is a subset of all of this. It's an entire different way it's priced, brought to marketplace, the expectations of how it works. It gets even worse now too when you then introduce companies like HQO, VTS. I always love, VTS is my favorite, I'll pick on them. Yeah, I met with their team and it's like, they're like, we're not access control company, we work with access control company. We're like, all right, so tell me what you do. They're like, well, we have a calendar, we have people, we can send credentials to them, and they can get into a door based off the need. I'm like, well, what do you think an access control system is? And they're like, we don't do hardware. So to them, our industry was hardware. And I was like, okay, now I get it. The definition, and I've got an article coming out next, is around the need for this new nomenclature of how we define things like access control. And it actually may even be access control. Like I'm seeing new companies come out, they're calling it access enablement. So it's this idea of getting to a space versus keeping somebody out of it. You build different with that. We saw that happen actually through COVID when frictionless and seamless came out, right? Where we took our ADA compliant products and just like erased them and called them frictionless, seamless, and we noticed it didn't stick. No kidding. It wasn't built to go do that. But we thought we can be cute and bring it through, and we found out that it can't. So this is entirely changing to where now these building management systems or tenant engagement apps that you see it, they're looking at access control with elevator control, mobile wallets. They're looking at it as data. So VTS is a data organization. So you can look at portfolio management, tenant experience, and IWS. So again, our products are being shoved through there in a different place within the funnel. Entirely different group of people. That's the other thing. This, entirely different group. It's not the security industry. It's not the security departments that are doing this. It's HR, it's culture, it's enablement teams. It's things like that are the real estate department that are bringing these in. And then take smart buildings, and it's like a company I pick on Verkada here because they're looking at it entirely different from a building management system. They understand that security is sticky and it's a utility. So they leverage our industry to go do the rest of the stuff that's happening, right? It's a subset of what's going on that end. And we look at it as a threat when I actually think it's good. Like, if they're doing 700 million, I can promise you that it can come from just our industry, right? They didn't just eat into the $10 billion side of our industry. They're eating into that $100 billion new side of the industry as well. Granted, they're taking some, but it tells you there's a lot more room for a lot of players. It's not just them, it's not just a threat. It's actually an opportunity for the rest of our industry to show up in those areas as well. And it's even changing, and I use these three as an example of how specification and distribution are going. If you're familiar with British Land, right? How about Stratosoft? Probably less than, right? Okay. And Deloitte, I think maybe you've heard of, probably heard of British Land too, being where I'm at, I just realized. Other places I do that, they're like, I don't know who it is. So if you look at it, sort of the three examples of why, this was a press release which was Swift Connect and HID collaborate with British Land to bring connected access experiences to buildings in London through digital wallet solutions. I don't know about you, but it doesn't say anything about safety or security, right? Nothing. But if you were to look at it, what did they do? Readers, locks, an app, cards, right? Like everything that we call safety and security. It's totally repositioning it, totally being sold in a different way. I mean, I don't know the last time you saw someone like British Land do a press release about a security system going in. Anyone seen it? If you have it, send it to me. I doubt they've done it. This complete campaign to differentiate their portfolio for investors. Right? That's why mobile wallets is like the first public luxury good that our industry has ever seen. And most of our industry is fighting it. Why? Because it's different. Rex AI is one of the first generative AI systems. It sits on top of, it's sort of, we talked about the PSIMs. Imagine a PSIM that was written the same way if those of you use ChatGPT or Claude or any of the rest of them. Imagine I can have a conversation with my entire global access control systems, security systems everywhere, cameras, everything, and I could just ask the question like, hey, on Tuesday, how many people do we have come through that had red ties on and a yellow hat? And it'll look through the entire thing and it has a conversation. It's a layer that sits on top of it. Super interesting. Go look at it. It's Rex, REKS.ai. And the guys are from, they used to be at Linnell, so they know our industry. But just taking an entirely different look. And I talked about this convergent Deloitte alliance that's just started. All right, so that's what. The next phase, the thing that's changing is training and certification. I pick on this one because this is typically, our industry treats training and certification as a transactional thing to get access to product. I used to do it when I did it at my last company. It was like, we needed to have this in place so that make sure when they turn a screwdriver, they're doing it properly, or they know how to spec a system. But as we move more to like an enterprise software industry, has anyone seen Salesforce? They've turned this into like a cultural phenomenon that people build currency and an empowerment based off of getting educated on their product. It's an entire ecosystem. And they go out and they actually form different relationships with different people, and it's more of an educational process than an access to product. There's an entire different way that we as an industry can approach the way that we educate than we do, and I highly recommend. And we're seeing a change in it. I'm starting to see different players come together to offer it. So you're seeing people like Cisco partnering with access control companies because there's the digital interface side. It's that convergence end that we talked about. My opinion to you all is I would, if you're in the integration side, I would take a relook at what am I certified in and trained in for not only what I need to be able to execute on the products that I sold today, but what do I need to be able to execute on the products of tomorrow of what the customers are looking for. And there's a whole breadth of product, the people that are out there. The biggest trend that's happening in our industry currently right now though, an influx of money. I get more calls from PE firms, VCs, and corporate dev departments that are looking to funnel business, not only in manufacturing, but in the integration standpoint, a consolidation of it. They did it in the HVAC industry, they've done it in lighting, they've done it in other areas. We're having that moment currently right now. It will transform how our industry is functioning because money has a way of doing that. And those are forces that we're not gonna be able to stop or can control. You're gonna see, I believe between now and the end of the year and the first quarter of next year, you're going to see more consolidation happen globally of product manufacturers. You're going to start to see more integrators, and even I think you'll start to see some companies vertically integrate as well, especially around like professional services. And it's not a bad thing. I think it's all part of the molting and evolution of what our industry looks like on that side. So again, these are the different trends. Happy to talk about one of those. So question I always get is, okay, great, when is this going to happen and what are the impacts going to be? In my opinion, this sort of water to ice that's happening, it's happening now. It's been happening. So it's not like it's a starting gun just started. I think we will see what is currently right now the outlier being that $60 billion industry that we talk about as sort of this weird thing that's going to happen. I believe it becomes the norm in the next 3 to 5 years. Money shifting over that area, more jobs, a subset of you. Some of you will continue the 10 billion side, which again is fine, but there'll be a large group of you that are going to be dragged into the bigger opportunity that exists over the next 3 to 5 years that we're going to see. The reason why is the influx of money, in my opinion, as well as the customer demand of the expectations that they're asking for on that side. And the impacts that I think are going to happen is a value arbitrage. I think what has historically been valued in certain areas, like if I'm a lock manufacturer, I'm a little concerned currently right now because those products are becoming commoditized. The value is being sucked out of them where historically it's been in the lock. If you look at the margin structures and the rest of all of our lock manufacturers that exist, the idea that they're going to continue to put 6% price increases for the same product they've had for 30 years ago as a way to buoy up their stock price and the rest, I don't think that's going to be able to happen. I think you're going to start to see it. I think access control is a feature of a larger value proposition is going to happen. Access control is part of something, like what Amazon's doing with delivery and the ability to get packages into the door. They see access control as a feature of delivery. They don't see it as a security product, and they're investing heavily in it. New truths will be here. There are going to be winners and losers in this, and that's okay. It's part of the evolution that happens. I do think we'll have for a while old and new at the same time. We should get very comfortable. It shouldn't be a fight between the two of them. It should be that both can exist. In this, I talked about co-opetition. People that used to be your competitors are going to start to collaborate. But now is the time, and especially for this group, because I think you have the permission to do it. I think the incentives are set up properly for you to take advantage of the new. I think there's a market demand at scale. Early movers that go into it, this first mover advantage, I think they will be a customer base that's waiting for you to bring new things to them. And I think you could do both, the old and the new. You don't have to pick one or the other. But it takes this desire to want to do it because it's not easy. You have to have a yes mentality. I notice the companies that do it. There is a level of sophistication. What I mean by that primarily is the way critical thinking, like holding two competing thoughts in our head at the same time, safety and convenience, old and new. We've always been very predictable business, very predictable industry. It was black and white. If we delivered safety, security, no one got shot, stabbed, or killed, we're doing a good job. The metrics are changing on that side, and we have to be able to hold that, as well as the ability to have communication and marketing and tell an enriched story. We should carry a little level, have a little bit more swag. Everyone familiar with the term swag? We should walk into the room being like, we are the people that deliver this utility. I can tell you, the people that don't do it are sucking that out of us, and they're using the swag. And we need to work as a team. So command the space you occupy, and then I'll talk about it. Stop the self-identity excuses, and I'm getting the sort of go. I'll finish here. I would rethink it all. Honestly, there's no better time than now to have a meeting in your office being like, let's not use what we do today in the past as an anchor to what we could do tomorrow. Let's reimagine what it would look like. Like, what if we didn't charge for hardware? Just think about it, right? What if we got into services? What would that look like? What if we positioned ourselves as an IT industry versus the security? What would that look like? Rethink the whole thing. And be the whatever we need for the next 30 years. Be the integrator, be the channel, the distributor, the manufacturer, whatever it is that we need for the next 30 years, not the past 30 years. I see that is the biggest thing that happens in our industry, is that we hold on to what we've done for the past 30 years as the reason why we can't succeed in the next 30. And you don't need to be that. Our industry needs it. And have clear point of views. Demand more from your partners. So as an integrator, expect more from AMAG. From what I've heard, they're looking to bring it to you. From what I saw in the first couple presentations, but start to demand more. It's different certification, different ways to engage in tools, and start with education. And what's interesting is as we get more digital and there's more community online, there's an even bigger need to be local community builders. That locality that you have is a strength that every manufacturer wants. So leverage it more that you have. And do omni-channel, both online and offline. All right. So just real quick, things that I'm thinking about 2025, these are going to turn into those trends. I do think there's a market impact that's happening here, the commercial real estate, access control, being a bigger system, two-class systems, like single system with integration versus best-in-class panel. I do think there's more consolidation. I really believe that Europe can drive more standards. The homogenous side of the US marketplace, there's no reason, incentives for us to do standards there. You all, because if you want to do work here, Germany, Italy, wherever else, there's a reason that you want to go do that, so do that. Collaboration is going to be king. Small companies without capital are in trouble right now, whether they're startups or legacy ones. It's about hybrid. The quicker we stop talking about cloud and on-site, the better. We should just get right to hybrid. Wallet growth is great, but still not that interesting. Frankly, putting a card in a phone, who cares? I think it's what you can do with it that matters. Enterprise software companies will become more prevalent. I think a large company in our industry will sell. I think someone like Dormakaba. I think one of the pillars that people don't believe will ever sell, I think will. There's a good amount of leadership opportunity. I think some institutions that we've believed in, like GSX and ASIS and IFSEC, are in massive trouble. We just rinse, repeat on those things. Thank you.